Welcome everyone, great to have you here today. My name is Tobias Bystrek, I'm product manager at IPOINT and I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes. I'm here in the south of Germany working in the product office right at the intersection of sustainability, compliance, data workflows and product architecture. And in that role, my job is essentially this. I take real operational challenges from automotive, electronics and discrete manufacturing and translate them into software that reduces complexity and actually makes daily work easier. Today I want to give you a clear, practical insight into something we call impact intelligence. So in my daily work, I get a pretty sharp, almost microscopic view of how industrial data behaves. And while every company is different, one pattern appears everywhere. The data exists, but it's not connected. Not technically, not organizationally, not in the people's mind. Compliance has a system, sustainability has another, engineering, sourcing, quality, each operates in its own world. So often these teams even don't realize they are all working with the same data. For example, materials, substances, suppliers, product structures, processes, not because anyone is doing something wrong, but because organizations have grown in silos, step by step, over many years. They have different responsibilities, different reporting paths, different tools, and the result is they have duplicated work, inconsistent numbers, slow decisions, and honestly, a lot of frustration. And in these times where speed determines practical participation, this is a real business risk. And that's exactly where my work as a product manager begins. We take the data that are already existing, break down those silos, and turn it into something that gives companies real steering capability. That's what we call the impact intelligence. iPoint has been supporting manufacturers for more than 25 years with regulatory logic, compliance automation, supply chain data exchange, and product level information. And today, the challenge is no longer to collect more data, but to connect what already exists and use it across departments without friction. And when that happens, something quite remarkable takes place. Companies unlock value that was hidden in their own data all along. So again, thank you for being here and let's dive in. Let me start with a line that sounds quite simple but captures the core of our transformation. Every decision you make has an impact, not only on costs, risk, or supply performance, but also on CO2 costs, regulation, material availability, financing, brand perception, and future market access. And yet, in most companies, sustainability and compliance are still handled separately. They have different responsibilities, different KPIs, different systems, but as I mentioned, the same underlying data. This leads to duplicated processes, duplicated efforts, duplicated costs, and decision made on fragmented or incomplete information. Meanwhile, the environment around us has changed dramatically. Regulation used to mean documentation. Today, it determines competitiveness. CBAM, CSRD, PFAS restrictions, battery regulation, digital product passport. Any company producing physical goods is affected. So the real question becomes, how do we manage this complexity? How do we steer? Not by adding another tool, but by changing the way we use the data. Impact intelligence means shifting from reporting to shaping decisions. It gives organizations room to move from reaction to design, from obligation to strategic advantage. Let me please show you how it looks like. The obligation becomes opportunity. For many years, our world revolved around documentation, certificates, reports, screenshots, uploaded PCFs, but that era is over. OEMs and customers now expect reliable, traceable, data-backed evidence. Reporting becomes a value driver, not a duty. And in that additional effort lies a huge opportunity. More transparency, more control, more competitive advantage. It's no longer can you report, but can you steer? Traditionally, companies acted when deadlines approached, legal changes hit, or an OEM demanded action. But new regulation reached deep into designing, sourcing, materials, margin structure. If you see risks only at reporting time, you're already too late. If you can simulate upstream, then you're the leader. The biggest obstacle is not missing expertise or missing tools. It's fragmentation. You have LCA tools here, supply chain pools there, Excel everywhere, duplicate data, duplicate checks, duplicate uncertainty. Impact intelligence solves this with a simple but very powerful principle. You capture once and you use it everywhere. One data model, multiple outputs, one source of truth. Let me give you an example. A tier 1 supplier with 3,000 parts per platform. He has 4 systems, 11 Excel breaches, 68 duplicated data entries, 10 days analysis time per request. After they use the impact intelligence, they have one data flow powering reach, CBAM, scope 3, DPP, supplier scoring. That means 72% less manual work, 4x more useful information. It's the same data, but an entire new impact. Let's make it a bit more concrete. When I say impact intelligence, I don't mean yet another dashboard. It's not an ESG portal. And it's definitely not a replacement for your ERP or PLM. I think of it more as the operating system for your impact data, a steering model that brings everything into a structure so that impact can be calculated, compared, and used in real decisions. The way we do that is through what we call the CARE model. If you only remember one concept from today, please let it be this one. Let me walk through it. The first step is the C, the connect. In almost every company we work with, the problem is not we don't have the data. Mostly the problem is we have too much data in too many places. So in the connect phase, we bring together suppliers, formats, substance lists, CO2 data, regulations, and we harmonize them into one current model. The result is very simple but powerful. It's clarity. Instead of asking, where is this data? You can finally ask, what does this data tell me? The next step is the A, the analyze. Once the data is connected, we move to this step. Here's where the real magic starts. We apply rule sets, automated checks, threshold values, and scenario calculations. In other words, we move from I see something to I know what it means and what I can do about it. This is the movement where visibility turns into decision capability. It's the difference between a dashboard that is just highlighting problems and a system that suggests, here are your top 3 actions and this is their impact. After that, the third step is report. Now, reporting is still necessary, no question. You have CSRD, CBAM, REACH, I mentioned all of them. And each of them traditionally means a separate project. With impact intelligence, we flip this around. Instead of building a report first and then wondering which data do we need, we start from the connected data model and generate multiple outputs for the CSRD, CBAM, REACH, SCIP, LCA, and that means different regulations, but the same data backbone. The reporting becomes a byproduct of good data, not a separate firefighting exercise. The last step is the evolve. Because the truth is, the regulation will change, the products will change, the suppliers will change. So the question is, does your system learn with you? In evolve, we define KPIs, track improvements, link actions to outcomes, and we build the feedback loops into your daily work. This turns your compliance projects into continuous process. So if we put all this together, the connect, that means clarity, the analysis means capability, the porting means proof, and the evolving means progress. That's the care model. Please let me give you a second example, the care in the real life. Let me make this tangible with a real example from automotive. We work with a premium OEM who was using 11 different tools. And these 11 different tools were all about CO2, compliance, supply chain reporting. The result will sound most probably very similar to you. 38% redundant data, custom Excel bridges everywhere, and about 2 weeks of analysis time per part. Whenever someone asks a deeper question. 2 weeks for one part. With care, we didn't start by adding more tools. We started by connecting supply chain data, material substance data, CO2 data, and regulatory requirements. We then moved to analyze, rule-based elevation, risk scoring, scenario simulations. From there, report became almost the easy part. Instead of 5 separate reporting projects, we had just one processing layer and one data model, feeding multiple reports. And then finally, we set up the evolve, KPIs for CO2 per part, compliance status, supplier performance, all traceable, all repeatable. The outcome was pretty impressive. One processing layer, one shared data model, automatic rule updates, and analysis time down from 2 weeks, about 2 hours. The CO2 we are talking with put it in a single sentence that I really like. We use dashboards to see problems. Now we get decisions proposed. That's impact intelligence and care in a nutshell. So now you might be wondering, okay, sounds good in theory, but how does this actually fit into my IT landscape? And so let's talk about the architecture for a moment, and I'll keep it very practical. The architecture is, of course, state-of-the-art. It's open and API first. That means we don't come and say, hey, please replace your ERP, your PLM, your supplier portals. Instead, we connect to what you already have. At the center of this setup is what we call the IPOINT processing layer. You can think of it as the brain and the translator of the system. It does 4 main things. The first is data harmonization. It brings data from different systems down to a constant structure, even down to substance and process level, if you need. The second is the rule-based evaluations. It applies regulatory logic, PFAS, REACH, CBAM, and many more. So instead of manual interpreting regulations every single time, you have a layer that does it systematically and repeatably. The third one is the scenario calculations. It allows you to ask what-if questions. So what if we change a material? What if we switch a supplier? What if CO2 prices double? And you don't have to start a project every new time. The fourth point is the output distribution. It sends results where they are needed, into reports, scorecards, dashboards, or the interfaces to other systems. On top of this processing layer, we run 5 modules. These are not 5 separate tools. There are 5 different views on the same data. The first one is the product sustainability. It's focused on LCAs, product footprints, and design choices. The second one is the supply chain transparency, focused on supplier structures, country risks, and upstream data. The third one is the carbon management, focused on CO2 steering, pricing effects, reduction strategies. And the fourth one, digital product passport, it's focused on product data for market access and customer requirements. The fifth one, compliance automation, and this one is focused on regulatory checks, notifications, and documentation. So whether someone sits in sustainability, compliance, engineering, sourcing, or quality, they all look at the same underlying truth, just through different lenses. And that's exactly what the model makes scalable. You don't build 5 data walls, you just build one and let each function see what it needs. Up to this point, we've talked about logic, data, architecture, and impact. But now let's talk about how organizations actually anchor this in reality. Because impact intelligence isn't something you install, it's something you embed. From all the companies we've accompanied, there are 5 practical steps that makes the difference between interesting concept and measurable results within months. So let us go through them. First, we integrate systems. No replacing ERM, PLM, or supplier portals, as I already mentioned, but connecting them through a shared processing layer. The moment data flows automatically and consistently, half of the typical manual reporting work, it simply disappears. The second step is competence building. Impact intelligence only works if the people using it understand the logic behind it, not in depth, but enough to take confidence decisions. That's why training, onboarding, and practical enablement are not afterthoughts, they are core implementation tasks. The third one, advisory. We've seen too many companies outsource their impact tasks because it's too complex. But externalizing complexity does not make you future-proof. It only makes you dependent. So the goal is not outsourcing, it's enablement. Advisory should transfer knowledge, not replace it. Fourth, governance. Who owns which data? Who validates rules? Who approves decisions? Who maintains product and supplier information? Clear governance prevents the "we thought they were handling it" syndrome. That creates the very complicated gaps companies try to avoid. So with clear ownership, impact becomes repeatable, traceable, and scalable. The fifth point, steering loops. Impact intelligence becomes valuable when decisions create measurable improvements over the time. So we define regular lightweight loops, weekly, monthly, quarterly, in which KPIs are reviewed, actions are taken, and progress is monitored. This closes the circle from data, decision, impact, improvement. Quick example. A tier 1 supplier we supported made one simple change. They shifted the CBAM cost control from sustainability into procurement. Why? Because CO2 is now a price factor, and procurement knows how to manage price drivers every single day. That's what we mean by governance and steering. It's not theoretical, it's operational. If I had to summarize everything we've covered today in one thought, it would be this. Impact intelligence is not another piece of software. It's a new steering logic, a shift from impact over reporting, integration over silos, modular over monolithic, enablement over dependence, steering over reaction. The regulation will increase, the complexity will increase, but the competitive advantage grows for those who shape early. With connected data, interpret it once, and use it across the entire organization. If you want to see this in action with real product data, real suppliers, real substance structures, real cost effects, then get in contact with us. No animations, we don't show any staged examples, just real processes with real data. Because the impact doesn't start in a report, the impact starts now. So now I'm coming to an end, and thanks for your attention, and see you next time.